Om Indram Mitram Varnam Agnir Matarato Divyaha Sasuparno Gurutman Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedantyagnim Yaman Matarish Vanamahu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. To that one transcendent reality, the seers assign many an honorable title, such as the friend of all beings, the waters of life, the fire of yoga, the carrier of consciousness, the devourer of death, the eternal companion, the father of the gods, and the one who shines forth the light. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Vedanta Siddhanta Nirukti Yaresha Brahmaiva Jivaham Sakalam Jagatcha Akanda Rupa Stitir Eva Moksho Brahmadvitiye Shrutayaha Pramanam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. It is the apt and final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman. Time, space, living beings, and the world, living in constant recognition of this fact, is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is pure and perfect, and one, without a second. And the revealed scriptures are the sure and certain proof of this fact. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Kharvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings, and may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We have returned to this hallowed ground to explain and share the teachings of the Dharma. Last time we talked about Dharma was at closing the class yesterday at about 12:30 when we ended it. Unless any of you have been talking about it overnight or with your spouses or friends or children, which is of course the intended best conclusion for it all, work it into our lives. We can hear it, and then we should roll it over in our minds and then realize it in our self. And then a fourth movement is possible, bring it into life, and not leave it in books and temples, as Swami Vivekananda was wont to say. So we make our best attempts at that kind of integration. And we looked at some of the ways to do that yesterday in the early slokas of the Akshi Upanishad. I keep saying Ashki because that's also a Muslim word that's very powerful. But Akshi Upanishad, like last night the Pujarini put the 3 streaks of ash on the Shiva Lingam, and then put the kumkum, and then put the little grain of rice in the middle. You see in the worship, that's called Akshitam. Akshitam. So Akshi is the third eye of Shiva, as it were, opening. So Akshi means to open that singular eye that Christ said, if it be single, then the truth will be known. So that's in 7 different traditions I've found that reference to the Jnana Chakshu, or to the wisdom eye, a white dove ascending, and other references. So that's what we try and do when we raise consciousness up to higher centers. It just stays at the 3 lower centers, or the 3 lower worlds. That's why we say peace, 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 because those 3 lower worlds need it. But the upper worlds, the more inner worlds, are interior worlds, the kingdoms of heaven within, if you will, are not in need of that peace. They're living in it. So we'd like to bring some of that inner peace out into the external world as far as possible. And this is a world of transformation, and apparent anyway. Seems everything's changing, although at the root everything's remaining the same and never changes, as I just chanted. But in this sea, or this ocean of apparent change, we have to find some stability, and we feel that the Dharma and the teachings are that stability for people. Morality, with its companion immorality, is not doing the trick, and religion is failing it, and religion's also failing us as it does so. So that's why yesterday we looked at a new religion called the 4 Yogas, and that was in accord with one of these slokas we read from the Akshi Upanishad. So hopefully you're entertaining that in your mind. And if you're doing that, then, as I said yesterday, you're already having a kind of higher state of consciousness, a kind of samadhi, it's called. Samadhi is divided into 2 kinds, one with seeds and the other without seed. The singular one is without seed, and that's of course what Christ experienced in the wilderness, under what Buddha got under the bo tree, and Muhammad on the mountain, and so forth. They go into this very special place that's non-dual. That was also with regard to one of the slokas that we had here, number 2, when the sun god told Samkriti, the rishi, the knower of truth rishi, went to the sun god, and he had to repair inside. So you can't go to the outer sun and get any answers. You just get burnt to a crisp. Or if you're at a good distance away, your worship of the sun goes only so far as a tan. And that's all external, and it's all vanity. But if you go to the inside of where light originates from, ultimately that would be the Word. When Sri Ramakrishna saw the Word, he said he saw worlds coming out of it and worlds going back into it, and no time was passing. So you're in a timeless place, and when you're on that tract of the third eye, or the Jnana Chakshu, the wisdom eye, and you're seeing the birth of worlds and the destruction of worlds, when no birth or death is going on for you or for anything else. Everything is eternal. And that's why we just chanted that the Vedanta says that all is Brahman. It's not all Brahman unless you can rise to that level where Brahman is seen and known. Otherwise it's all Maya, or samsara, the Buddhists call it. Suffering, 3 kinds of suffering, 3 kinds of sorrows. This Upanishad says that if you transcend the three kinds of sorrows, then you're at the first limb of yoga. And the first limb of yoga is silence. You become silent and still, like a mountain lake, Buddha says. Swans are always seeking the next higher lake, and they go higher and higher. They get dissatisfied with the relative peace, and they want deeper peace and deeper peace. So that's also mentioned here in this Upanishad. Remember, when Samkriti saluted the sun god, he said, among other things, "O you who are the essence of purity, the blessed one who scorches all sins, the blessed swan, who is the essence of purity." So Hamsa, or that swan, is that bird that's always flying to a higher and higher lake in order to get deeper and deeper levels of peace. That's what it enjoys, the nectar of non-dual truth, or peace. And so there are certain souls in this world whose path it is to represent and epitomize that peace. And they get to that highest station of consciousness and enjoy ananda, or bliss. So on the way there are different samadhis that you can enjoy. Knowledge samadhi would be the one you're enjoying right now. You came here, you got concentrated, you're listening to a speaker. That alone is a kind of samadhi. Even if you go to a worldly event and concentrate one body of people, then it's a kind of samadhi, but nobody knows it, of course. They're just at attention. But it's better than to be at attention than to be scattered and running around in a fragmented society where people are thinking of unworthy things, or maybe not thinking at all. But real thinking leads you to true non-thinking, which is going from action to inaction, as Krishna says in the Gita. So there's a kind of inaction that's free of thoughts and vibrations, into which the mind plunges. Shankara says, like a hailstone into an ocean, and just gets supreme peace there. The ocean of consciousness, with its swell, nectar-like swell of the Atman, into which my mind plunged like a hailstone into an ocean, and I felt the peace, like Christ said, the peace that passes all understanding. So that's a non-duality. And so when the Upanishad says here in its second sloka, which we looked at yesterday, all is one, and after that it says the adepts know that yoga is the non-knowing of plurality. So he wants to put it both ways. He wants to say everything is one, but since you cannot limit reality, Brahman, God, Allah, Almighty Spirit, you cannot limit that to one, to a numerical one. So it doesn't really, it's rather a cliche that people just, oh, okay, it's all one. See? So my ice cream is one, and my cigar is one. Various things are all one. And that doesn't really wash in Brahman. So he says it the other way then. He says the adepts know that non-duality is that yoga, union with reality, is the non-knowing of duality. So duality just disappears between them. They don't see right and wrong, good and bad, higher, lower, left and right. Out of two eyes, here out of two ears only. But everything becomes singular and merged, samadhi. And it doesn't matter what the outside does then. It can go on with its hell in a handbasket ride to nowhere. And the seer can just detach from it and be very peaceful, which if you have to leave society and go into a cave or whatever, you do that. Go where the senses get deprived, not where they get fed. The teacher used to say, you're teaching your children self-expression. That's not good in a society like this. You should teach them self-abnegation, how to get rid of the self, not how to glorify it. Because in a society like this, then they'll go on that wild ride, Mr. Toad's wild ride to nowhere. And all the books and fantasies are about such things. But nobody knows peace, nobody loves God, nobody comes to have samadhi or nirvana, and nobody escapes the clutches of Maya, and nobody transcends the realm of rebirth. 1, 2, 3, lower chakra, middle chakra, third chakra, the three worlds. Nobody gets beyond that. The fourth world is the heart. And in order to get into the heart, as I was saying yesterday, you need to break through that bond of your ancestors and love God more than the world. Choose God or mammon. Grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but take unto yourself what is the Lord's. So it's been said in all religions by different luminaries. So the Upanishads were just first on the scene. You see 108 of them are left from that age of the ancient rishis that Samkriti comes from. He's going to the sun god to ask him about the deepest knowledge. What is light? What's the origin of light? And science will only go so far with exterior lights, external glares, little glints and fragments of light here and there, or maybe the light of an atomic explosion, which is all outer and destructive. But if you split the curtain of Maya and look into the atom of your own thought process, and you'll find Mother Intelligence there. She's much more powerful in a much more beneficial way than anything external. And so they become very enamored, and they'll sit in a dark cave, deprive the senses until that light appears inside. They won't be able to mistake that for any external light, because there is no external light. When Rishi was passing from the body, and I told you yesterday, he said all of a sudden, "Oh Lord, take the sun away now. I'm tired of it. It's just an external light. Show me your inner light. Show me your true light. Take that globe in the sky away, and all those billions of stars, take them away. I'm through with this world. I'm going to my source again." So there has to be an involution in order for the soul to get satisfied. Evolution won't do it. So therefore, it's not only religion that's leaving us high and dry in this world, it's also our religion in America, science. The onslaughts of science. Did I read that yesterday? I don't think I did, but when Swami Vivekananda came here and saw our predicament, caught between the rock of fundamentalist religion and physics and science, which was soon to become quantum physics, which was not all that much more illuminating. When he came here and saw that, then he made comments like that. He said, "Sober-minded beings have become disgusted with their superstitious religions and are looking to India for new light. How eagerly they take in any little bit of the grand thoughts of the Vedas." There's the four Vedas with their different Upanishads, or not breaking ignorance, Upanishad, you could say. How eagerly they take in any little bit of the grand thoughts of the Vedas, which resist and are unharmed by the terrible onslaughts of modern science. The theories of creation out of nothing, a created soul, of a big tyrant of a god sitting on a throne in a plane called heaven, and of eternal hellfires have disgusted the educated. And the noble thoughts of the Vedas about the eternity of creation and of the soul, they are imbibing fast in one shape or another. So the only problem here is time. It takes a long time for the human mind to decide on higher knowledge and pursue it and then attain it. Everything happens very slow. People can hear the truth in a day and age like this, and it could take them most of the rest of their lifetime to finally decide that it is true and follow it. So one lifetime would be a very little amount of time to give to the pursuit of the teachings of the Upanishads. And we've been doing that for about 25 years now in SRV, and in 4 or 5 different ashrams in this city alone, and at my teacher's ashram just about a mile away up Hawthorne, where I learned it from him, from this short little bent-over Hindu man in his 80s who transmitted to me what I had been looking for my whole series of lifetimes, and reminded me of the true essence of everything. And it had nothing to do, and it was everything against theories of creation out of nothing. That doesn't make sense. If there's a something, a nothing, there has to be a something. If there's a creation, there has to be a creator. And if there's movement, there has to be non-movement. And if you're even a scientist, you have to judge things fairly that way. So I would rather think of everything as being without beginnings, middles, and endings. because then I would know that my problems occur in cycles of time, cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction, cycle of three gunas called laziness, restlessness, and balance, and all sorts of cycles of ancestors, humans, and animals, and that consciousness is moving without moving. It's stationary, but becoming manifold, as the Upanishads say. It's got the ability to express itself, yet its essence is still, like a candle in a windless place, we chanted this morning at meditation. Yato dipo nivatastu nengati sopama shmrita. Let's remember that, shmrita, that consciousness is immovable, stable, and imperishable, akshara, and also not subject to change, as I said yesterday, because even intellectual people who hear the Upanishads can't get over that hurdle of change. See, everything seems to be changing in their world, their mind, their thoughts, matter. Everything's changing constantly, but they never are able to still their minds long enough to see the unchanging substratum, the underlying foundation of everything. That would be where you would get this samadhi, and you might have to sit under a tree for 12 days and 12 nights, or 49 days like Buddha did, in order to still your mind long enough. See, this is another problem as we take to meditation, like Zen and so forth. Spend most of our times with empty minds. It's not the emptiness we had in mind. See, the emptiness we had in mind was stillness of vrittis, and after that, the emergence of light coming out of us. And you'll have to sit a long time to see that. You can't see it just with sitting an hour occasionally, and you're not going to be able to see it and be satisfied with it if you get just a glimpse of it. There are many people having experiences, even in dreams, of such light, but it's not transforming them. And that's the real measure of a thing, if it transforms the mind. The mind is the only true transformation that happens. Otherwise, all other transformations are misleading the soul. And like when the body dies, you think the soul died, and that's a lie. There's no such thing as birth and death. That's an illusion. There's no such thing as time either. So when time changes something, you think in terms of change. When space changes, like lava flows over your home, or everything gets flooded, like happened in my home last month, you think that there's some change going on when there isn't. You're the changeless witness. You can prove rebirth to yourself just by saying, I am. Like, now I am. I've died many times, but I'm still here. So is death final? Oh, death, where's thy sting? Shakespeare said. Even Westerners have entertained such thoughts. So, but when you have it inserted into the culture over long millennia of time, and then you have Dharma teachers coming forth right in your neighborhood and teaching it to you, like the experiment we're doing here in San Francisco and in Hawaii and so forth, then something should click in you, something should catch. Because you're engaged in the eternal money making, it doesn't. Because money making draws you away from remembrance of your past lifetime. And they put you to money making as soon as you're old enough to walk. Your schooling is all based on money making. Economy. Commerce. But you never have commerce with your own soul. You only have commerce with the non-self. Air, earth, fire, water, and ether, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, seeing, thinking, owning. You could call this another word for the ego, see, and fantasizing, projecting, imagining. All these things are done in nature with the non-self. While your self stands pure and perfect, looking on, wondering, when is he going to wake up? When is he going to wake up? When is he going to turn and look inside? Turn instead to the original that doesn't change, that doesn't let you down, that doesn't fail you, that does fulfill you. And that's why beings like Samkriti would go to the sun god and say, well, I want to go to a highest authority and find out what light is. You see? So he already has an idea of what light is. He says to salutations to the blessed Lord, the glorious sun, the power of the eye to see, Akshi. Salutation to the sky wanderer. Salutations to the commander of the armies of light. Salutations to darkness, which is only the excess of light. Salutations to the divine energy, and salutes him in this way, and then asks him the questions he wants to know. Give me the knowledge. So Surya, the sun god, gives Samkriti that knowledge. We looked at it yesterday. He asked for Brahmavidya, and the sun told him, Samkriti, listen to me. I shall set forth the knowledge of reality that is so hard to come by. By that knowledge alone will you become liberated while living in the body. So there's an ideal of you don't have to wait for a post-mortem emancipation. Your freedom is right now, and you've just forgotten it, and decided not to live in it, and you've decided you're bound instead. Liable of liable, it's the worst sin to call another a sinner. Vivekananda came here, you should be calling each other divine beings. You're God walking around on two legs, and there's no other God here but you. So if you realize that, then half of your problems go away. Then it's just a matter of seeing beyond the dualities. And he said that's yoga. When you get into yoga, you'll know it to be the non-knowing of plurality. There's no two, there's no many. That's the changing Brahman. Saguna Brahman, they called it. That's Brahman that changes in front of your eyes. Or you could call it Brahman's Maya, the snake's poison. But the snake doesn't die, it just has poison in it. You'll die if you get it infused into you. So you back off from it, Sri Ramakrishna said, and see it from a distance, witness it. Don't partake of it. Don't participate in it. Be in the world, but not of it, as they say nowadays. And know yourself to be different from that. Like oil and water won't mix. You and the world will not mix in the end. And you'll have to get that special state of consciousness that Patanjali called Kaivalya. You learned that word yesterday. Separation from nature. If you're entertained by nature and all the outer appearances and phenomena and so forth, or even the unseen in nature, the atomic particle, if you get entertained by nature, then you've forgotten the truth already. And you're in the world of plurality. Billions and billions of subatomic particles changing at a billionth of a second over billions of years of time. And it's all sleight of hand, and it came from your own mind. God had nothing to do with that. God is a transcendent reality. You're going to have to go somewhere deep within to find that, because it's not here. And it's not a he or a she either.
No, it's cattywampus. Yeah, that part, that made it worse. There, thank you.
Happy?
Yes.
Now, we looked at the Upanishads. This is a big star map of your own wisdom. And you are on this star right now, the Akshi Upanishad. And there's Mother Saraswati, whose wisdom with all this behind there. And we ended up looking at her four fruits of life, if you remember, as suggested by Sloka 4 and 5, which is talking about action and inaction. Aversion to inborn tendencies to act is felt, but that's aversion to that, like not wanting to go and engage with things when you get up in the morning or at night, wanting to turn everything off. You have aversion to action, and you try and get over it and move tamas into rajas, from inertia to action. And that's a battle that's going on all the time, that it gets tiring after a while. Pretty soon you just want to stay in one place. Hopefully you want to do that when you're young and not when you're just an old cadaver. then you can't move when you're old. But if you can not move when you're young, then you've got a real advantage over everyone. You just come stay still. I was listening to children around the neighborhood running up screaming. Parents would just say, you need to be quiet. Here, sit with me. Here, shut your eyes. Silence the tongue. I don't ever want to hear you scream again. And teach them. Teach them about their inner self, their inner nature. Don't let them self-express themselves. Not in a society like this. In the Satya Yuga, yes, you want to hear the words of the children, because the children came right out of the womb and they remembered Brahman. They remembered the life they came out. As soon as they could talk, they could tell you about it. It's a beautiful story about baby Uma, born to King Himalaya, king of the mountains. And she, before she got into the womb of his wife, she showed herself to him and said, I'm going to be born as your daughter. So he was waiting for this, you see. So he finally held her in his hands as a little 2-month-old baby, and she was restless. She always tear off her clothes and didn't want any coverings. And she'd look at the moon and try and grab it, see in the sky. Well, moon and earth can never come together. And she would weep and cry about this, and she wasn't happy in the body. But when she got older and settled down, then he asked her, I said, I know you're Divine Mother of the Universe because you told me about this before you got into the body. And I know you can grant me anything in the 3 worlds. So why don't you grant me a vision of Shiva? And the little girl said, fine, Father. Touched him. And he had his vision of Shiva and talked with Shiva. And then next day he was saying, gee, that was great. So easy too. I didn't have to do any sadhana for it. Any disciplines. So I'll ask her again. So he ended up asking her for visions of all the gods and goddesses. And spent weeks in darshan with the inner powers. These powers are inside of you. You find them inside of yourself in the kingdoms of heaven. They're not outside. The sun god's inside. The sun is outside, so it's a reflection of the inner. It's waking state, dreaming state. It's 2 opposites. So finally he got through asking, and he said, well, one day he asked her, well, now you've given me the visions of Saguna Brahman. Can you give me the vision of Nirguna Brahman, formless Brahman? And not so fast, Father. Sorry. Not so fast, Schwartz. For that you have to live with holy men. Only holy men can give you the vision of the formless. So you have to be qualified for that, because nobody likes death. Nobody likes to see their own death, and that's what you're seeing when you see the formless Brahman. If you see the formless Brahman in a balanced state of mind, then you don't think about your body leaving your body. Like in dream tonight, deep sleep, you leave the body, but you don't think about it. It's not being forced upon you. But if you are aware of the body when you begin to have a vision of the light, then you're aware you're going to have to leave the body, then it's frightening for people. They have fear because they're attached back to the body, you see, by the silver cord, they say. And at death cuts that silver cord. Yama, he cuts that silver cord at the predestined time. Death is predestined. Certain things are predestined. Other things depend on your own actions. Random, seemingly random. So, anyway, she said, no, Father, cannot do that. You know, everything inside the realm of name and form I've shown you, but for the formless, you have to live with holy men and go into samadhi. So these samadhis are there to have. You just need concentration. The 8 limbs of yoga. And I haven't told you yet, but there are 8 limbs of yoga here. He's calling them the stages of yoga in this Upanishad. I'll make a chart on that and show it to you maybe in December when I come back, because he is taking you through 8 stages. The first stage is accomplishing these first 7 or 8 slokas, and then in the 9th sloka he says, basically, you've attained the first state of yoga if you've understood what I've said up to now. Now let's practice the 2nd state of yoga called vichara. What's vichara mean? inquiry into the nature of reality. That is, the unreal never exists, the real never ceases to be, but the seers have known both. They've known the non-self, and they've known the self, so they can separate the wheat from the chaff, and just concentrate now on one. People try and concentrate on the one, but the world is in the way. See, the thinking mind is in the way. Children, wealth, families, commerce, all that's in the way, so they cannot think about God. It's impossible. Very rarely do they ever get a concentrated moment on the divine. And that's why we teach them about the Atman, see, because Brahman, you might say, is the composite of all Atmans, but you have a dynamic spark of divinity within you, the Purusha, or the Atman. If you can identify with that, then you can deal with the non-dual Brahman later. See, oh, I am now a hailstone. I fell far enough from ignorance to turn into a raindrop. See, so now I'm not crystallized anymore. I'm beginning to become liquid. Now I see the ocean, I go, oh, hell, look at that. You see, I'm about to merge. So, trepidation will come to beings who see that. So qualification for it is necessary. You're going to have to prepare yourself for it. With each breath would be a good idea. See, in-breath is birth, and the held breath is life, and the out-breath is death. So you're being born and dying every breath. And when the breath is gone, it's when the prana evacuates the body. So then you're going to need to know the prana. You can't just say, oh, I breathe, I breathe. Most people don't even know that. So you go to a teacher, they say, well, I see you're not breathing. You're just kind of huffing and puffing or something. Or holding your breath and no deep breathing, going, here, the Buddhists and the Hatha yogis, they both take you and say, well, come on, let's breathe. Sit like this with a straight spine and breathe. And that'll be a good introduction to reacquainting yourself with yourself. May we make a humble offering of the small self into the great self, the Upanishads say. So that's to be taken seriously. Now your breath can be expanded 24 hours, and the same thing is happening in your in-breath, held breath, and out-breath. Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka, they call it, is happening when you go in waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are three other phases now that your consciousness is going through. So now you know that there are three worlds, and they're inside of you, and that you visit them every night. And you finally figure out where the kingdoms of heaven are. Because they're not up. So they're inside you, they're your dreams. Dreams are heaven. You're actually in heaven when you're dreaming. But your consciousness, it hasn't been taught that, and it hasn't expanded itself to know that. So you've got all these books out there. Oh, it's a new discovery. It's called lucid dreaming. No, it's just called getting to know your dreaming state. It's called bringing your consciousness into your dreams. Because your society and your upbringing, your parents and their parents all the way back through 3 or 4 generations of America and 2,000 years of Europe have taught you that it's just a dream. It's a figment of your imagination. But the dream is at least equally as real as the waking state is. And they mirror one another. You have 5 senses here and 5 elements here. You also take them into dream with you. You have water in a dream, and fire in a dream, and you see in a dream, and touch in a dream, and so forth. So you just have 10 outer senses and elements and 10 inner senses and elements. You've gone from one state of your own consciousness to another, and you ought to acquaint yourself then with the kingdoms of heaven within you. It's where your ancestors went. They didn't die. They gave up their outer body and they went into a subtle form, and that's in heaven, yes. Heaven, the way Christianity speaks of it nowadays, is very limited. And it's not a goal for us. There are much, much higher worlds than heaven. Much, much deeper places to go, including your own self, which contains heaven in it. All heavens, all worlds are inside of you. The kingdom of heaven is inside of you. So it's the you that's important there, not the heaven or the glories. Or even the deities that King Himalaya got to see and have darshan with, if he didn't realize those were within him. Those are his very self. The self is all in all, none else exists, and thou art that, Swami Vivekananda said in his beautiful poem. So you have to connect it all back to the self, with a capital S, to the Atman, to Buddha nature, to Tathagata Garbha, to Busho. Whatever religion you're in, there's a word for it. And it's nameless, and it's formless, and it's timeless, and it's spaceless, and it's deathless, and it's beyond karma. So he's talking about karma here so much, you see. Aversion is felt to inborn tendencies to act every day, but it's very easy to plunge into noble actions. So if you get somebody who's bored with life and you give them a higher turn to do something that's more gracious and more helpful to people, they'll usually be noble, Arya. They'll usually be noble about it. Yes, I'd like to do that. And that's where tamas and rajas just turn to sattva. You now have a balanced mind and you're enthused about things. You have Vividisha, the Swami up in Seattle. What was his name before Swami Bhaskarananda to Vedanta Society? Swami Vividishananda. He was the bliss of knowing, of having an interest in spiritual things. That's called Vividisha. So he looked at all the words and names he could take, and as a monk he said, I have a deep interest in enlightenment, like our founder Lex Ixon said, deep interest in the enlightenment of all beings. That's my main interest. So I think I'll call myself Vividisha. But most people are Avivividisha. They're not interested in spiritual things whatsoever. They're earthbound. See the animals with their heads in the earth, eating green things all day, just completely earthbound. So animalistic people are like that. There are three kinds of people: animalistic, heroic, and divine. And the heroic would start to take their minds off of earth and be interested in people, in souls. So they would have a deep interest in the enlightenment of others. And they know that won't be able to happen unless they give up serving themselves. Selfishness has to go. Selflessness has to come. See? So you see that in the seers. The great souls are selfless. So with Arya, we had that, be noble. And then we had this sloka, which we started looking at the four fruits of life through. Always one hesitates as regards to instinctive actions of the unregenerate. One never refers to what may compromise others, but attends to their righteous deeds. So we support each other with righteous deeds. And there's plenty of grounds for that when you look at this Purusharta's teaching on that the Divine Mother grants. Divine Mother, Shakti, gives the four fruits of life then. Purushartas, they're called. And we looked at the first two yesterday with that cautionary teaching that dharma has to come first. So if you are so fortunate as to be born with parents who understand the dharma, which very few in the West, is why we don't have Illumined souls in the West, except from other countries coming, like Tibet and India, then you haven't heard of the Dharma yet. You maybe got a little bit of teaching in morality and how to be good and so forth. But good is a gold chain. It takes you to heaven, which is a very low place to go. So what you want is liberation, not salvation. You don't want to have to depend on anyone, because you're already free. You just don't know it. So anyone that's coming along, from Christ to Buddha, or any of the founders of the religion, or any illumined soul that's sitting and telling you, is coming along simply to remind you that you're divine. That's why you don't believe in eternal hellfires, and you don't believe in, in a God sitting on a throne judging you and all. That's superstition. And you cast it out. And this minute you do, you're already more healthy. Your spiritual life you can actually have a spiritual life, which is a rare thing. You're not under the thumb of the priest class anymore, and so forth. You're already feeling free, and nobody can tell you otherwise. And the proof is in the pudding. You begin to pursue higher trains of thinking and higher mind and higher consciousness, and they come to you. And the beautiful thing is you realize that Divine Mother already put these in you before you were born, along with the Atman. She inserted that soul into you before she even came to earth and said, remember, you're not the body, you're the soul. Don't forget that, and then you can play in the fields of the Lord. And we call it Leela in India, divine play. And you can go back to your source again. You always have you evolve out, yes, but you always have an evolution. Prati sancharaha, you'll also return to the source at the end of every life, and then you're fine. You can play until you're tired of dolls and soldiers. Right now the world is just all about playing with dolls, having children, and the women and the men are playing with balls, playing with their balls, making huge sums of money and running around up and down a floor to no avail, except more ignorance in the future. So you've got to use your money, you've got to use your skills, you've got to waken people up, you have to waken up yourself first. Even Buddha left his family, only to return later and show them the path of the Buddha, because he realized he had to get free first. And what do you need to be free of? False thinking. You're always free. That's the nature of your soul, is freedom. Soul equals freedom. So what covered that in my series of lifetimes? How many curtains did I draw over it? Most of them my own doing, and others due to the society and my upbringing and my ancestors. So break the bond of your ancestors, Buddha said, and be free. Know the self, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So she's put desire, the presence of all these in you already, and all you need to do is brush off a little coverings, you see, little pebbles, and there's the gold of it. And we saw Dharma was the first one of those. A Dharmic society would be nice, but in this day and age, where is it? In earlier ages, he started off saying that. In an earlier age, everyone discriminated between the real and the unreal. They came out of the womb that way. So, that light of consciousness, you lived in it. It radiated from you. It's called tejas. He mentions that in the next sloka, tejas. So that fire of spirituality, or what we call the fire of yoga, that's what we need to burn away these false superimpositions that have come about due to our own misguided thinking. Conventional ways and means that we followed and fell into because everyone else was doing it, and we never struck out on our own. We went upstream. Instead of going downstream with the pleasure crafts, we go upstream with the kayak. Thank you. Take a kayak to a far distant land and burn it. Never come back. So we looked at Dharma, we saw the bullet points of it. Must be there before desire and wealth are sought. So you should be taught that. Here, learn these Dharmic precepts. Okay, now go, make your living, have your family. Be protected by Dharma. And so otherwise kama becomes a problem. Notice that kama, and a lot of people in the West will say, oh, I know that Sanskrit word, I like the Kama Sutras. So as long as it's about lovemaking in different positions, you see, they're interested in that. They've got plenty of vividisha around that. Messing with bodies. Doesn't matter, new parts or old parts are all decaying. So you withdraw from that. Instead, you get desire which is legitimate. You fulfill yourself with people who are filled with light. See? It's a natural progress, a natural progression to free yourself amidst an enlightened society. And so kama needs to be checked that way, and so does artha. We arrived there yesterday at artha. Artha, right livelihood in keeping with dharma. So you couldn't say my wealth is rightly earned if I didn't know about dharma first. Because a treasure kept in a mirror reflects in a mirror, Sri Ramakrishna said. So your wealth is always there as a distraction. Not only to furthering your spiritual enlightenment, but to remember your past lifetimes. Aparigraha. You must be remembering your past lifetimes, because if you remember your past lifetimes, you don't have to go to school again, because you learned all that before, or hopefully you did. If you learned it well, then you take it with you. Nothing's ever lost. And what you gain is already yours. You talk about education, see, but education is the manifestation of knowledge that's already in the soul before it's born. It's not something you have to do to bring to others, unless they're ignorant and forgetful, see. So education is a manifestation of knowledge already in you. And all knowledge lies within you. Kingdoms of heaven are within you. So all you need to do is remember it. So you should be spending some time, rather than running your wheels at school 8 hours a day, sitting and trying to remember all this knowledge that you've acquired for so long. It's called smriti. And if it's a hard-fought battle, then start thinking about the scriptures and the teachings, because that will bring back powerful things. Whatever was powerful in your previous life that really interested you, that really contributed to your spiritual life, all your karmas are attached around that. All your activities are attached around that. It's like iron filings around a magnet. So if you remember that one most important thing, everything else will be known. See? What was the greatest question ever asked by a student to a rishi?
Tell me that by which knowing all else is known.
Yes. Teach me that one thing, sir, by which knowing all else is known. So that's yourself. It's your true nature. It has everything, it knows everything, so life is really futile. Why are you coming here? You're already complete. This is a dumbing down of who you truly are. The body is a limitation of your Atman. If you want to express yourself through it, well, good luck with that one. But hopefully you would already know I'm perfect, and this is just a sport or a play or a dream, and an exercise, or maybe service of God and others, as we looked at the yogas yesterday. There are other ways to use your life which are more noble, Arya, rather than referring to what may compromise others. Jealousy and hatred, things like that. War between the races. I mean, all this stuff is just layers upon layers of Maya that's been exacerbated over centuries. And people are being born into it, thinking that it's the norm. But who is the true human being? The true human being we saw when Sri Ramakrishna came here in the 1800s. There's the true human being. He was illiterate. He couldn't even write his name. He didn't want anything to do with the world. He married a 6-year-old child when he was 20. Everything was so different, you see. And he was totally unattached to any of it, and left the body after 50 years and became the great world teacher of 6 million people now in a very short time. So there's a true human being. That's ordinary. That's normal. Abnormal is going in all sorts of directions. Impossible things that we're seeing. Implausible. Impossible. Unacceptable. And just look into your politics. See what happened there. Impossible thing happened, didn't it? But there it is. That's the manifestation of your society over several hundred years. Finally happened. And it's all a kind of insanity. So Who is the sane person? Who's the normal person? Who's the ordinary person? Who's the lover of God in a world that doesn't like God anymore? I mean, they didn't like Jesus. Nobody liked Jesus. Even his direct disciples abandoned him at the end. So this world has a real penchant for matter, just loving matter. Loving matter, forgetting grace. Strange indeed, this human race. Man unkind, they call it. So we must return to these basic premises again. You must be able to walk up to someone who says, I love God first and foremost. And not be scared of criticisms. Say, God, what do you mean? I don't like that word. Oh, well then Brahman. What's that? Allah. Oh no. See, there's so many barriers between people and religions, but it's all the one. You see, if you scared of using the word one, then say it's the non-knowing of plurality. Find a way to say it to them, in which they will understand it. Because when it's understood and remembered is when the smile starts happening on the face again. And all of a sudden everything lightens up and people understand each other, and you can have commerce. You can get together in a room with a bunch of people and talk about truth, which we should be doing all the time. There are many gatherings and meetings and conventions and so forth going on. And is one word of God mentioned there, I wonder? Even in churches, maybe. So, like up the street, the bingo game going on in the basement of a church. So, artha is right livelihood in keeping with dharma. It's predicated on a dharmic lifestyle married to the quality of generosity. So giving is dhanam, it's called. Giving is good. And not just taking to the self and selfish grasping or clinging to everything. Basically out of fear, or maybe jealousy. The 6 passions have to be transcended. Lust, anger, fear, greed, pride, envy, jealousy, pride of caste, pride of lineage, shame, grief. These are the 6 passions and the 8 fetters. That's a short list of them. Artha, right livelihood, will also require that you move amongst the sense objects without attachment. So you can just move through them. You see, you sit in a chair, then you leave it without thinking. So there's an example of how to move through with all other sense objects, including bodies, just to be there and then be gone. See, children comes to sit in your lap. Goodbye. See, send them away with a cell phone or in fear of what's going to happen to them. They're not your children. Christ told you that. You didn't listen. Their soul's under your care, so you better be able to guide them, because next lifetime things will be the other way. You'll be their child, most likely, or their wife, or their son, or their father, or grandfather, and you'll want the same kind of consideration that you gave them. Do unto others as they would have them do unto you, and so forth. All of this is based in knowledge of reincarnation and karma. Christ knew all about it, but those references were taken out of the Bible in 4th century. Because if you know about karma and reincarnation, it tends to free you. It's not the ultimate law. It too is in the world of change and Maya, because the soul never gets born, so what are you talking about, rebirth or death? But who knows that soul is the thing. If you don't know that soul as your own self, then you're going to have to refer to the next best thing, and that would be not this inside-the-box thinking that I live once and die and that's it, that I came from nowhere. You see, I came out of nowhere, out of nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. How about that for a Zen koan? Nothing doesn't exist. There's always something. It's just that that something is in seeds inside your mind, and you water them and bring them out, turns into something. So if you don't know your mind, you don't know the seeds back there in deep sleep. They're all held in deep sleep. and you select them and you come out into dreaming and then come out into waking. It's called the three worlds. And it's in a breath, like I said, and it's in a 24 waking, dreaming, deep sleep period, phase, and you're not examining it. You're not examining what happened to you last night when you were nobody and nothing. You're just letting that curtain of nations fall over you and not questioning it. And millions of people are doing that with you. So there's a big veil of nations, or a curtain of unknowing, a cloud of unknowing falling over everyone's consciousness at night. And it just so happens that when he's shining his outer form on one half of the world, she's making it dark on the other half. So nobody wakes and sleeps and dreams at the same time as a whole unit. So this is how Maya divides and conquers. Ignorance is much more powerful than knowledge, Sri Krishna said. And that's true at these three lower centers. But if you can transcend the realm of your ancestors and get to the heart and the throat and the third eye, metaphorically speaking, then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You won't wake and dream and go into deep sleep anymore. You'll have yogic insomnia. You'll be in an ever-awake state, like I saw my teacher. Final bullet point of Artha, right livelihood, is based upon the twin ideals of non-ownership and careful responsibility. So everything you get does not belong to you. You're just a custodian for it. And you help send it in other directions. The yogis like to give away. They don't like to collect. They collect, things start to feel heavy, and not only heavy in their life, but heavy towards their death. And they don't want those responsibilities on their mind when they leave. Like the man dying and looks over it. Trim the lamp, you're using too much oil. Ramakrishna told that story. She'd be thinking about exiting the body and trying to see the light and merge in that, and you're thinking about economy again. You're burning too much oil, indeed. The quote there by Lord Buddha says it. Blessed are those who live amidst abundance and among those who long for possessions, yet whose longing is not for the world, but rather for the supreme happiness of spiritual bliss. So, in the Dhammapada, he says that. That's the Hinayana scripture of India, Indian Buddhism, the earliest Buddhism. So he was talking about that supreme bliss that comes. It's sort of like Jesus saying, and he would say that 550 years later, after Lord Buddha came, you don't store up your treasures here on earth. You store them up in heaven. So these beings are really not belonging to any religion. There was no Christianity when Christ was living, and there's no Buddhism when Buddha lived. So they're just free souls who have thunk outside the box and realized their Buddha nature, their true nature. And so they can make statements like this and make them stick for thousands of years. All three of these, interestingly enough, lead to liberation. So she's got it planned. It's a system on its own. If you're a worshipper of Divine Mother, like we, the followers of Ramakrishna, are, then you'll see that everything leads to moksha. Moksha is a state of freedom always at hand. It's not something you gain. It seems like you gain it, but as I said earlier, you always have it. You are free by nature. Otherwise you wouldn't long for freedom. You wouldn't even think of freedom. Everything, you tether it or leash it or put it in a body, it all longs for freedom, you see. Oh, I feel bound now. I'm not comfortable. See, there's something not right here. So everyone's leaning towards that freedom. They're rushing towards that freedom the minute they're born, because they know they've been put in a limitation of body, mind, mechanism, of psycho-physical being. See, but their Atman is free of those things. And so all you have to do is contemplate that Atman. You have to think of freedom. If you say you're bound, then you'll be bound, Sri Ramakrishna said. But if you think of freedom, think you're free, then you will become free. So you're putting barriers in your own way when you're talking about bondage. There are certainly limitations, but if you're not the body, then those limitations aren't going to affect you, because in deep sleep you're not the body, and in samadhi you're not the body. So the bullet points there: moksha, realization of eternal freedom, is founded in self-inquiry, which leads to knowledge of the real and the unreal. So that's the wheat and the chaff, the oil and the water. That's what will come to you. First, the desire to inquire about your true nature, and then detachment, and then the realization that you've always been free. Has to come in a kind of three-step process like that. And if you don't entertain the thought first, or somebody doesn't tell it to you, shravana or shruti, tell you the truth, then you probably won't get on that track. You could stay bound your whole lifetime and just be in a conventional round. And then the conventional round of society turns into a 200-year round with your ancestors, because most beings are out of the body for 100 years, and then they return after 100 years. No wonder they don't recognize anything when they come back, because 100 years can change the world a lot, and can change the souls you knew a lot too. They've gone too into another state. So for the ordinary person, Holy Mother says maybe 100 years rest and they come back for another lifetime. So in that scenario, it's a cycle. That it's a merry-go-round you want to get off, to be free of it, because you're coming back with the same. It's hard to talk about because we don't have words for it in English, but the same samskaras, mental impressions, if you will, that you engendered in your previous lifetime. You're coming back with those again. Those are what brought you back. Like Ramakrishna says, a calf is tethered with a stake and a rope, and it can only go that much from the rope, you see. And it only knows that much ground. So it can go toward the stake, and it can go away from the stake to a certain limit, and it can go around the stake. That's its whole world. So those samskaras, when you talk about mental impressions, is what you experienced in your past lifetime. It's also what you're experiencing in this lifetime. You've staked yourself out to just a certain half acre of real estate. Speaking about, if consciousness is real estate, so your own consciousness, you've staked yourself out to that much, and you're used to that. And then in the next lifetime, that's what will draw you back, and you'll be familiar with that, so that's what you come back with. And you don't ever break that bond, go outside that limitation. And that's happening to billions of people, called ancestor realm. In Sanskrit, that word is pitri, so I like to make the joke, it's a petri dish. See, you can't get out of it. You're just in that little slide, you see, under a microscope of Maya, and you can't go outside of it. So think outside of it. Your mind is expansive. May the mind expand in its ability to know Brahman, the peace chants say. Apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu shrotramatra balamindriyani cha sarvani. So all the senses, balamindriyani, you expand everything and see differently. May we see with these eyes what is good and spiritual. May we hear with these ears what is noble and uplifting. May we open that inner eye and know the truth. So everything about it is expansiveness, and your whole life should be fighting against those limitations and boundaries. It should be a constant vigil on your part to push through them. And never fall victim to that lower thinking again. The second part about moksha is it's revealed upon the extinction of desires, leading to quiescence of mind. So there's the importance about what Krishna calls in the Gita sthiti pragnasya, steady wisdom or steady mind. Samarasam, the fulfillment of all desires, based on ending in equanimity of mind. We'll talk about that next weekend at the seminar right here when we'll sing that stotram. Gyanamritam samarasam gagano pamoham, which you'll learn and sing with me. You can sing that over and over again. Finally, it's a state in which objects, their knower and knowledge are not found anymore. So, what to speak of beyond duality, sometimes you'll get a triputi and you'll go beyond that. So it says here, objects, the knower of the object, and the knowledge itself all become one thing. And we studied that last week on the American River when we were in retreat together. And saw through that triputi and turned the three into one. Well, here's what Lord Vishishta says about moksha and the four fruits. Firm conviction of oneself as Brahman is moksha. So you must think about yourself as God incarnate. Later we assigned God incarnate to Jesus. We assigned it to Buddha. We assigned it to Krishna. They knew that, but they weren't making any big deal of it. Where else is the God except you walking around on two legs? You're God here. There's no other God here except karma. You have to beware of the God of karma. But that's your doing. What you do with that, how you act. That's what these three slokas are all about. Rooted in yoga, perform actions, or if you're averse to actions, don't perform them anymore. Aversion is felt every day to inborn tendencies to act. One tends to plunge into noble actions, therefore. Always one hesitates to regard the instinctive actions of the unregenerate. One never refers to what may compromise others, but attends to righteous deeds. It's all kind of masked in a kind of moral, amoral environment, but one then does gentle deeds that pain no one and always dreads the karma that comes, and also does not become attached to sense actions and sense gratification only. It sounds like our society. Objects and actions and gratification is what we're after. And all of this is the realm of karma. You can't just go to a New Age party and say, oh, I've got my karma, or you're going to be born again in another lifetime. You have to know the dynamics of what all of this is made out of, because that's relativity you're talking about. You don't know reality. If you knew reality, you wouldn't be concerned with relativity, or relativity would disappear, because he says it would be the not knowing of plurality that took you over. You would be looking at all this as if it were connected. That somehow smell does connect to earth, and water does connect to taste, and fire does connect to sight, and air does connect to touch, and ether does connect to hearing. Nobody walks around thinking the five elements and the five senses have some connection inwardly. That's alien to them. Nobody ever taught them that. But that's Yoga 101. The first thing you learn in yoga should not be how to sit, because then you get all preoccupied with the body like they have done in America, but to make the interconnections from the outer tattvas, because that's the beginning to giving up the body and giving up nature. When you die, is to know the tattvas. If you don't know their connections, you can't go anywhere, like that calf. See? So these are things you need to know. Yes, they're relative, but since you can't know the real, then you have to take up the relative and know it. Na asat, na bhavo, bhavo na bhavo, vidyate, sataha. The unreal never exists, the real never ceases to be, sat asat. So the seers have known the difference between the two. They've studied them both. Since Brahman was not available here to them, because that's only transcendent of the mind, and they took the mind and they put it on nature, not the way a scientist does, to get swept into nature as if it were something real, but to see that it was all unreal, that it was all just a manifestation of their own mind. And then they went back in the mind, turned it off. See? just like you do in deep sleep tonight. You turn this all off. You've got the finger on the switch. Deep sleep, waking. Oh, the switch got caught somewhere in the middle. I'm dreaming. See? You got 3 settings on that switch, and you're the operator. But nobody ever asks what will happen if I throw that switch into deep sleep. Nobody takes their consciousness into deep sleep with them, or meditates on deep sleep when they get up in the morning, first thing. Dreams are signposts. There's much of mirage as this world is. It's dream number 1 and dream number 2, Ramana Maharshi said. So deep sleep should interest you. And then what's beyond it? A, U, M, and Shvara. If you've seen the Om sign, it just means waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and what's beyond it. So there's a little tiny letter there with 3 matras, 4 actually, and those 3 are everything from Mother, Father, and Guru to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, to waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, to the in-breath, to the held breath, to the out-breath. The Word is everything. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. So that's 3 things. So go back to the origin of it and find out where it all came from. That's an inner trek. That's an inner journey. That's a pilgrimage to the most pure of all pilgrimage places. And you have 3 nerves that take you there too. Speaking about 3, there's 1 up the middle, and there's 1 around to the left, and 1 to the right. 1's male, 1's female, 1's central. Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna. If that gets put outside, it becomes the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. See? Then it's an outer journey. You're discovering oceans, but you need to take these 3 inner nerves and go inward, take an inner journey in that ocean of consciousness, which is the source of the outer. From the finite to the infinite. It's all infinite, but from the finite is infinite too, but in the end, only infinite remains. It's all eternal and infinite. So, all of this will be entertained by your mind until you find out that objects, their knower, and their knowledge are not found anymore. Your interest is off that. The shine is off of illusion. And now you're only interested in the real. And that's yourself. Now you're in bliss. Now you're in samadhi. Now you're in nirvana like Buddha was. And couldn't speak for days about it. So, Vasishtha says here, initiation and instruction from a guru and a spotless intelligence are the 2 means to moksha. So there's a young man coming Wednesday from Iceland to take initiation into our fold here. He'll take mantra diksha and he'll work on his intelligence to make it spotless so he can be free, get free in this lifetime. Those virtuous ones will gain moksha who, from early childhood, train themselves in Atmagyan and associate with great beings. Like our founder, like Sixen. You heard of any saint, seer, sage, savant coming from any country outside of America, he would fly, train, or walk there if he had to meet this great being and interview them. So now we have some 320 interviews of Lexixon on In the Spirit Radio, interviewing everyone who was anyone, who said they were anyone, through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, all those, and into the 90s, the In the Spirit interviews. So you must put yourself amongst great beings and train yourself from early childhood. You're going to need some special parents for that. Don't whip yourself about it. The direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna had to go through their parents too, mostly. Remember Swami Vedananda in his memoirs said, I had to sneak out the back of my house and walk through the jungle to get to the Paramhamsa and come back before my parents woke up. So, because they forbid him to go see this illumined soul. So that's the day and age of today. Nobody wants you free. They want you bound. And you should be absolutely certain of that. Your society, your fair weather friends, they don't want you free. That looks alien to them. And so you're going to have to be on a journey of the alone to the alone. That's what they call, Vedanta calls the journey of enlightenment. It's the journey of the alone to the alone. You are always alone. You'll always be alone. There's only one you. You're it. It's the greatest game of tag you ever played. And everyone else that was playing the game of tag with you were no one else but your own self. They were your projections, and you are their projections in their own right. But that cannot change the face of non-duality. And the seer would prefer to dwell there in non-duality. Least amount of resistance, least amount of pain, least amount of fear, time and space, karma gone away, resting in the peace that passes all understanding. We'll go into another chart after the break, but we should probably end the break with how this is sung. Jaya Jaya Jagavandini, Jaya Jaya Jagavandini, Devi Dukha Harini Tarini, Devi Dukha Harini Tarini, Mahesha Hridaya Vashini, Jaya Jaya Jagavandini, Jaya Jaya Jagavandini. He goes on to sing Jnanada Varda Sukhada Mokshada, basically the four fruits. He also sings Jnanendra, Upendra, Jogendra Dikoto. So in different ways he's put this, you are the power that grants knowledge, dispenses boons, gives happiness, and bestows liberation. So not content to meditate and draw these teachings out of the interior mind of the luminary, well then put them into the scripture, and then when you won't listen to scripture, he'll write a song for you. So maybe that will get through to you and see that these four fruits of life are your own. And you just need to account for them like any other thing inside of you, and they will become you, and you will become them. So here, let's take a break for 15 minutes. Svagatam, we welcome you back to the Dharma atmosphere of SRV associations in Portland, Oregon. I talked with a few of you who are live streaming during the break, and around the world, from Ashland and California and Hawaii and Iceland and various places, people are watching. So it's always good to have a small group, I think, because when things get too big, then you lose that personal attention and tends to look scattered or feel scattered. And so we need to have that special attention that is given to us when we decide to concentrate on our own inner guide. Definitely there's a Sangha here and a Guru, and what you should avoid is a congregation without a leader, Shankara says. But on the other hand, Sri Ramakrishna said that the real Guru is your own self inside of you. And so if you need some pointing in that general direction, then the outer Guru or the provisional Guru can come along and help you and just reorient you. I was saying at the break when we were talking about the four fruits here, that if this were a Buddhist chart, all of this would be shown after right orientation. So right orientation would be very early on, like in the Ashtanga Marga, the Eightfold Path of Buddha. And then right orientation, you would have the right teachings, you would have right use of wealth and right use of legitimate desires and so forth. So right orientation is important because I do see people coming to classes and writing me a lot, but they're getting the Dharma late in the game instead of right when they're born, right early on. So lots of times they get the teachings midlife or later in life, and then a lot of the karmas from kama and artha have already accumulated, and so you're needing to decondition yourself, as a Buddhist would say. You want to get rid of these conditionings that are beginning to set in from trishna, is how they would say desire, kama. And so that's behind the eight ball kind of process. Be better if right orientation were right there at the beginning and you heard the truth, like Samkriti is hearing it here. All is unborn. So here you are born with parents and they're telling you, but you're really unborn. See? All is tranquil. And here, amidst the riotousness of life, and they're saying, don't worry, everything's tranquil. And in the other pair of opposite, it's endless and beginningless, but it seems like every day has a beginning and an end. And so does your breathing process, and so does your waking, dreaming, and deep sleep process. So you've got a lot of appearances of Maya, or what we call in Vedanta, false superimpositions. It's the best we can do in English. In Sanskrit, if you said the word vivarta, amongst the seers or amongst the knowers of Brahma or the seekers of Brahma, they would immediately know if you're talking about coverings, that the reality doesn't change, but it does get sublated by coverings, apparently so. God is all one and the same and unchanging and all that, but it appears different because of Maya. Maya is basically name, form, time, space, and karma. That's the fivefold formula for what ails you. Because you're really a nameless, formless, timeless, spaceless, causeless, effectless being. I didn't say feckless, I said effectless. So that's the truth. So you're going to have to hear that first and foremost and then work on it. Chew on it. Teeth on it. Cut your teeth on it, spiritually speaking. Maybe in each lifetime until you finally learn it once and for all, and you'll be like one of these great souls, like him. Like did I already put it? Like him. Yeah. So I think Four Fruits chart covers Sloka 5 and 6 if you're following the text. Does anyone want a printed out copy of this who didn't get one before? Because I forgot to say that at the beginning of the class. Radini, there's a copy for you. And also for you. We all got. And then bring them with you next time, so we don't have to keep printing them out. Next time means in December when I'm here. Because last time we went through slokas 1, 2, and 3, and this time we have just gone through 4, 5, and 6. So now let's take up sloka 7. Such a one's speech is informed by affection and love. It is lovely and fit with due regard to time and place. So, never tell a harmful truth. So you always be very careful about how you speak, even when you're in a critical mode or in a positive mode, positive construction and so forth. Your speech has to be very informed. So that's why I was going to show you the gateways to yoga. There's Holy Mother, and control of speech would be the first one. So people would have to get over fault finding and slander mongering and flapping their lips and usually about things that never happened in the first place that they're assuming are true and real. And also get over gossip and just stick to the point and stay to the dharma. And also societies would have to quit squabbling and talking all the time. Worldly talk, little zeros that amount to nothing in the end, but just distract the mind from profound things that you could be talking about that fulfill you, rather than things that take you away from the point all the time, take you away from the meaning of your existence, the real reason why you're here. Because you hear people talking about how they're not getting any meaning out of life and they're dissatisfied at the beginning, middle, and end, maybe. So why? You need to then maybe practice silence and control of speech. Mauna is a word for it in Sanskrit. So I was going to take you that direction, but maybe next time I wanted to take you more towards that your speech be informed by affection and love. So we have to know then, just like we have to know what true wisdom is, we have to know what real love is and what it's not. It's been one of the teachings that the more profound teachers have let us know, that from Christ and Buddha on, that we're loving all the wrong things in the wrong places, that God is not here, God is not in the world, and you're looking for God in the world. God is not an object, so it can't be anything that can be an object or be objectified. It's an eternal subject, and that thou art. You are that eternal subject. So when it amounts to it, if you take away the body, the 5 senses, the 5 elements, the dream senses, the dream elements, the fourfold mind, the intellect, God's mind, and Om, then that thou art. Otherwise, all of these are false superimpositions over your true self. And all of those are changing. So the rule of thumb in India, if it changes, it's not God. It's Maya. And there are degrees to change, from subatomic particles changing at a billionth of a second, which is ridiculous. Let's talk about shifting sands that you build your house on, all the way up to God's mind, which is very beautiful and almost changeless. Almost no vibration there, because all of this is vibration. Vibration here has become so confusing that it's turned into solid things when they're not solid. I mean, if science is your religion, you're going to have to admit it. This is not a solid object. There's no such thing as a solid object. So solidity is a false superimposition over something that's swirling and changing all the time. So we can't get away from that, but what we can do is make the right conclusion about it. That it's an appearance. That there's a appearance tree, as we said yesterday in the meaning of objects chart, and then there's the real tree, which is swirling particles, and then there's the essence tree, which is the Buddha nature tree, and we need to go to the essence of things, beyond the unreal and the real. So there's always that's plurality you're talking about there. And there's always a non-dual version of that which you should revert to, and that is always back in your own self, peaceful, blissful. and so forth. So if we want to look at love, this would be a quick study, a quick chart when we looked at this and saw what Sri Ramakrishna said about it in that most wonderful of all modern scriptures, we could say, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Everyone should be reading that, partaking of this recent incarnation's natural and spontaneous wisdom. And there you see, he says there, love is the rope by which one can tether God, as it were. Whenever you want to see him, you merely need to tug on the rope. But one must know the difference between a green mango and a ripe one, between immature bhakti and mature bhakti. Bhakti is devotion to God. An unalloyed love for God is the essential thing. All else is unreal. So that unalloyed love is reflected here in Samartha. We might as well we'll just jump to it from the quote and work backwards. Samartha is selfless love. I also call that prema. Sri Ramakrishna said, that's not here, is it? I'll be jumping the gun on it. That Radha had that selfless love for Krishna because she would forget everything when she heard his flute or heard his name. There's a beautiful story that comes to mind that Sri Ramakrishna told that whenever the gopis, the beautiful women around Sri Krishna, is a rasa mandala, it's called, and all of them, Krishna was their god, and so they would get together, the gopis, and talk about Krishna. So, and they would weep. They loved him so much, and so Radha never wept, and she was supposed to be, his consort, his main consort. So. One of the gopis said, Radha, see how Radha, she never weeps. She must not love Krishna that much. And then one of the other gopis said, no, she loves Krishna so much that he's a fire burning within her, and as soon as the tears start to form, the fire dissolves them. So that love, deep, profound, for God alone, love thy Lord, thy God, with all thy heart, all thy soul, all thy mind, that's a very rare thing, and like I said, really I think we only really saw evidence of it in the recent age in the form of Sri Ramakrishna. Everything to him was given up for God. And he called God Mother, so it's rather a refreshing thing for a patriarchal society and fundamental Christianity and so forth to have this new divine feminine, Shakti it's called, being placed at the heart of things, because she's always hidden. He would say that she's always hidden behind veils and long-suffering. Lajjapattavritti nityam sharda jnanadayake. We sang that last night. See, when I sang the 8 verses on Sri Sharda. That's his consort, Ramakrishna's consort. That's the Radha of the age right there. And so when talk about Samartha, then that's that fourth kind of love. He says the highest type of love wherein both parties love selflessly, each wanting only the fulfillment of the other, even regardless of their own. So they would sacrifice everything for the good of the other and not even think about their own happiness or pleasure or goodness. It's unconditional love is how we've been saying it when we try and look for a good term in English.
How's that different from samajasa?
Let's go on and we'll see.
Oh, sorry.
We are live streaming. Moving back one, ekangi is a one-sided love. That's also a very authentic kind of love. A true and authentic love wherein one loves the other devoutly, but that love is not reciprocated by the one being loved. We see that situation a lot, everywhere from monasteries to marriages. We see that kind of devout love in one person, but it's not being reciprocated, and that can be due to actually selfishness in the other party. It can also be due to the fact that there's no physical attachment anymore, and the love of the beloved is so high that you just need to rise to it rather than pull it down to you. Vivekananda was talking about that as an ideal. We need to raise ourselves up to God. We can't bring God down here because God won't come into form. It doesn't mix. Oil doesn't mix with water. So we will need to do some sort of act of transcendence with the mind, to do away with the desires of our mind, like in the case of these 4 fruits we looked at. If we can subject them to dharma, then we can start seeing God inside of us and loving God inside of us. Then we can start seeing God in others. And it can be the real divine article. So, a true and authentic love wherein one loves the other devoutly, but love is not reciprocated. That's ekangi, it's called. He often used to say, using a metaphor, for instance, the duck loves the water, but the water doesn't love the duck. In fact, the duck does all sorts of weird things in water that would make the water not like it if it had a liking. So, the duck loves the water, but the water doesn't love the duck. That's kind of a metaphor for ekangi. Samanjasa is mutual love, a noble type of love wherein both parties seek the happiness of one another. It's not as high then as samartha because it's based in happiness. And we call that, what do we call that nowadays in a conventional marriage? Basically convenience. Marriages are for convenience. Convenience means that we provide for one another, for husband, wife, and children. And it all usually falls pretty much on the level of basic affections. Hopefully those are there. Hopefully human love is there, because human love is a very beautiful thing when it's sincere. But it also falls into lower echelons of love or attachment and convenience sake and so forth, is that you have to be, it's provisional. It's not unprovisional. So you can get mad at your husband or wife or at your child or at your parent and not love them anymore all of a sudden, you see, and get over it and so forth. So it's all changing in a changing panorama of different levels. So that's the difference between samanjasa, basically, and samartha. And sadarani, ordinary love, conventional or selfish love, assumed for the sake of one's own happiness, but disregarding the happiness of one's partner or of others. That's kind of a common love, or just a kind of a selfish love. And we would try and overcome that with selflessness. Like I was saying, going from the animalistic, pasu it's called, to the heroic, which is and then moving on to from animalistic to heroic to divine, daiva. Like Hanuman had a heroic kind of love for Ram. He loved Ram so much, and he was a great hero that would even protect Ram when Ram was really protecting him. So he would take on all sorts of problems and solve them for Ram. That's of course in the classic Ramayana, another great scripture we should all read. And then the final quote here, actually there are 2 quotes, but we had the first one. Let's read the one at the bottom. Like I said, this is a quick study, but it is a kind of reorientation around love, if you have questions about it, because it is a confusing level of our consciousness, can be confusing. It should be pretty straightforward, so this helps. But Sri Ramakrishna himself said, "Do not speak glibly about love. Is it such a commonplace thing? True love, prema, has 2 characteristics. First, it makes one forget the world, for its intensity causes natural detachment from external things, or transforms them into Brahman. Secondly, true love takes away the feeling of my-ness from the body, which is usually so dear to man. In the sweet upsurge of prema, one wholly gets rid of the feeling that the body is the soul." I said that yesterday too in class. That's that first evolute of Tantra, or in Tantra it's a teaching, it's called Deha Jasa Ahamkara, Deha body, Jasa false superimposition, Ahamkara ego, Ahamkara. So in our egotistic way we've come to think that the body is the soul, And the soul is transcendent of all bodies. Your waking body, your dream body, and your deep sleep body, it's actually beyond all three of those. It's the light permeating everything. And he used to say about love, that kind of said, it's like sweetness in sugarcane juice. It's not something you could extract very easily, like wetness in water. Well, let's take the wetness out of water. Well, let's take the whiteness out of snow. You don't think in that way. You think it's just one homogeneous mass. And in the case of love, then it's not specific or particular unless it breaks out and decides to be that way. It doesn't get limited. It's unconditional and of a very non-dual nature. So sometimes if you're seeking God through the path of wisdom and love takes a back seat, apparently so, and you're seeking God through love and wisdom takes a back seat, when those two meet, then you'll see that they're the same thing. You love what you know, and you know what you love. It's just along the way, you weren't clear about that. You didn't know what to love, but knowledge came along and helped that. And you didn't know what knowledge was, and love helped you understand that. So bhakti and jnanam, they say, are the two wings of the bird. The teaching my teacher, Swami Sheshananda, gave all the time. His picture's there on the fireplace altar. That he would say that all the time in almost every lecture. Two wings of the Boyd. We wondered who Boyd was, but then we figured out. So then those two should complement each other, and the bird can actually get off the ground. Sort of like we were looking at the four yogas yesterday, and Vivekananda saying, if you only have two of these, you're kind of one-sided, in my opinion. You should have all four of them. You should have love for God, wisdom of your true nature of yourself, and you should meditate and know how to get transcendent of all bodies, and you should serve others, serve God and others. That would be bhakti, raja, jnanam, and karma yogas, those four yogas. The new religion of this age. So we think about Sri Ramakrishna like that, and we can't help but sing something like Jaya Shri Ramakrishna Bhagavan Karunamaya Jaya Kripa Nidana 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 Jaya Shri called the Sri Ramakrishna Chalisa, 40 verses on that great soul who appeared to us in the 1800s and whose chief messenger, Swami Vivekananda, came here in 1893 at the Parliament of Religion and introduced us to the Dharma. Really, hopefully it was not too little too late. But all of us, at least as individuals, can make sure that that's not the case and pursue it and know the truth and get free. That will be the best thing you could do for society. There's nothing better. So when we say such a one's speech is informed by affection and love, that's the more enlightened soul, and that it is fit and lovely in due regard to time and place. So there's where we might look at something like the four sensitivities, the four beneficial attitudes, and the four perfections of the heart. This is a Vedantic teaching, and we don't find a lot of bhakti and love systems in Vedanta. You'll find some of them in yoga and a lot of them in Tantra. But in Vedanta, it's kind of the cutting-edge sword that's known for non-duality primarily, and then after that, qualified non-dualism, dharma. So there is the truth, which doesn't need teachings, and then there's the teachings which will help you know the truth. Vedanta is known for that. It's a double-edged sword, and that's the sword Mother Kali raises to cut off the head of ignorance in those famous icons of Mother Kali, and who is Sri Ramakrishna's chosen ideal. But we do find some beautiful systems of love in amongst Vedantic practitioners, and of course a lot of them in the adepts. So back here it says, the adepts know yoga to be the non-knowing of plurality. So they're talking about a bridge from lower knowledge to higher knowledge, asato ma sadgamaya, or from qualified non-dualism to non-dualism. Like if Christ was saying something to the common people, he'd have to speak in dualistic language. So it fits here, you see, with due regard to time and place. And you might as well add in there to character and personality too. If you just have fishermen and tax collectors as your devotees, then you're going to have to dumb it down so they can understand it. But if you have these adepts who have been trained for lifetimes in these astute systems of dharma, then you're going to have to raise it up and interest them with non-dual teachings as far as words can go. And we were just talking about how so anyway, with regard to time and place, this is a good teaching about that what he's saying here about adepts. You see, they know yoga to be the non-knowing of plurality. So if Christ was speaking then to common people, I was saying, then you would say, pray to your Father in heaven. Well, there's no Father and there's no heaven. Ultimately, there's just you, the self, the great self. But you have to envision a Father and you have to envision a heaven, and then you put the two together eventually and you find out you're that. It's all you. There's no other reality but yourself. And gods and goddesses and heavens and angels and celestials and God itself is all an object of your mind. And if that mind is pure, those objects are pure and they can be beneficial to you. If your mind is impure, then those objects can act as weights, and religion will fall into fundamentalism and superstition, and it won't be doing you any good anymore. So Vivekananda will have to come along in that particular age and say, let's get rid of the superstitions around religion and get back to the truth, that thou art aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. You are God walking around on two legs. Libel of libel, it's the greatest sin to call another a sinner, and so forth. He will say things to you to rid yourself, snap yourself out of that kind of thinking and get back to the truth of the matter. So as the truth begins to get introduced to you, it's dual. Pray to your Father in heaven, because that's how the people can stand it, can take it in regards to time and space and place, time and locus. Now, if you find a Pharisee or a Sadducee or a rabbi or someone who is more on your level, and you're trying to teach him the new religion of the age, that is, the new prophet, the new rabbi has come, and to try and resurrect the old Judaism at the time, then he says to him, I'm the vine and you're the branch. See, now you have to look at me as the connection. So that's qualified non-duality. That's called Vishishtadvaita. And that's how you would speak to somebody who's more astute, who has more intelligence. They're not accepting religion as superstition anymore. And they still believe in a God that's untainted and transcendent. But then you find someone like John or some of the great disciples who, had come with me and meditate in the Garden of Gethsemane. They went and had them into some higher experiences. And so you would tell him, I and my Father are one. Or would he ask Peter, who he said it to, who do you say that I am? Oh, you are the Lord. Same thing happened in Sri Ramakrishna's time when he asked Girish that, and Girish said, Sri Ramakrishna said, who is standing before you right now? You're the Lord in the human form, he said. So from age to age you have these beings that recognize the avatar or the divine incarnation and will come with them when they take a body and leave with them when they go away, just like Uddhava at the river retreat we were talking about Uddhava. And Krishna says, I'm leaving the body now. And Uddhava said, take me with you. I want to live here if you're not here. This was God, this was his love. This was his samartha love. And he'd found him after many lifetimes. So Krishna said, no, just stay here. The age is ending. You're going to want to leave society. You're going to want to wander in the forest and be as free as you can for when Shiva comes and destroys all this in whatever form Shiva takes. Floods, famines, fires. And but then Uddhava said, but Lord, I've just found you in this lifetime. Where am I going to find you again after the destruction? And he said, oh, well, that's easy. Go to the fires at night of the holy people, the Duni fires of the yogis, and they're sitting around talking about me, even though the world's about to be destroyed. They're talking about nothing but me, and you'll find me in their hearts. So it's a beautiful teaching love-wise, but it's also a beautiful teaching wisdom-wise, because he's actually leading Uddhava to the formless. Krishna's form is going to go away, at least physically, and so he's wanting his disciple to be invested with knowledge that God is formless, Brahman, Almighty Father, the Spirit, which is how this starts off, right? It's all about the Spirit. See, all is one, unborn, tranquil, endless, certain, immutable. See reality as the Spirit. Be tranquil and at ease. Sloka 2. So that training has to go on for all of us, that we need to let go of all pinions, all underpinnings, all fingernail holes up that slope until we can just see the entire mountain inside of ourselves. And I went looking for the fruits of spiritual life on the branches of spiritual practice. I found out that the whole tree was in me. The Sufis say, see, the lovers of Allah. So the whole tree was inside. I went looking for it as if it were outside. Found out that when I found the fruits, fruit, branch, twigs, leaves, tree, ground, everything was right there inside of me all the time. Otherwise, you're sitting by a river trying to sell water to people who somehow can't see the river. So this is an apparent, obvious truth, or the truth, with a capital T. Satyam, we call it in Sanskrit. So all of that is a precursor to this Sloka 7, where speech must be informed by affection and love. So if you look at this, we'll take this in the remaining minutes of our class. You can see this is a wonderful teaching about these three sets of four. So the four sensitivities are there. And I found that quotes from Holy Mother matched them. She's the Radha of the sage, as I said. My teacher's teacher, Shisharda Devi. And so she said about goodness, samanasya, be good, do good, then purity will come. That one who has a pure mind sees everything as pure. So that's a sensitivity that you were to hold. Actually, this whole class has been filled with little systems like the four fruits, and the four types of love, and four sensitivities and all this. It's leaning more towards bhakti and tantra, this class. But you can see how it's all couched in the jnanam, the atma gyan of Vedanta. So it's a good example of the two wings of the bird. Then you can see Swami Vivekananda was all over that when he heard Holy Mother say that, because I even have a t-shirt someone gave me that says, be good, do good. That's the whole of religion. Swami Vivekananda. So when he heard Holy Mother say that, he adopted it. Then there's a sensitivity called medha. Medha is intelligence, so intelligence and love going together again. Dive deep with the noble teachings you have received and contemplate them in good company. Well, fortunately or unfortunately for you, when you go to SRV, you're going to get lots of teachings. People have both been happy with it and complained about it almost simultaneously with two different breaths. So, I mean, you're supposed to take those teachings that apply to you and take it all in like a sponge. Your mind is a sponge, and then later squeeze it out with your notes and what things really grabbed me. You see, and so you have to be engaged in a daily study of this. After the truths are spoken, you have to then roll them over in your mind, and your notes will help, the written word will help, your memories will help, and your pure mind will definitely help if you can have pure mind and pure senses. So dive deep with those noble teachings, just like, oyster gets a grain of sand, doesn't it? Dives deep. The grain of sand's an irritation to it, so these teachings may irritate you. And all I have to say to that is, ha, because eventually you'll form the pearl of great price inside of yourself by entertaining those teachings. And that's what happens. So if you take these teachings for a long, long time, then you'll explode. The mind will explode. That's called the liberation of knowledge. The liberation of knowledge means the ego can't live anymore, because you keep throwing at it these teachings that come from the mother, and it was used to being king of your life. You say you all love God and Christianity. You don't love God, you love your ego. And you're doing everything for your ego. And when you love God, you'll look more like him. What does he look like? He loves his ego? He's lost it completely. And he would lose his clothes too while he danced. And then some of the people who are more shameful would run up and try and put his cloths around him. He'd just be totally oblivious. Lost everything in love for God. And he would do that dancing, and he would do that sitting. It didn't matter, active or inactive. He was plunged in love of God and in non-dual wisdom. And we have this on good record by many people who were there. That's the beautiful thing about the avatar in the present age, is that there are not a lot of fables and myths that have grown up around them, walking on water and things like that didn't really happen. Christ projected himself to Peter, who saved him from drowning, but he didn't himself walk on water. He was sitting on the beach somewhere meditating. Oh, I think Peter needs my help. I'll project my form on the water. He'll think it's me, and then he'll help himself. It's called a vision. But it's not an actual transgression of nature. Where does that happen? Anyone that tells you that, you need to check that out real carefully. Scientifically, there's where your science will help you. But then you also have to know the science of mind, the psychology, called yoga psychology, and how these things are made possible. The impossible is made possible. So anyway, you're going to want to have this leaning towards the noble teachings, dive deep with them, like to form that piece of sand into a pearl. Compassion is next. Daya. Aradhana is the Sanskrit. Daya is the Sanskrit. I do not know anyone, not even an insect, for whom I do not feel compassion, she said. So that was, again, Sri Sharada Devi. I showed you the picture of her. So she used to, like, she'd see an ant, in the wrong place. But respective to space and time, she would go like this and then see the great master's face in the ant. Oh, Sri Ramakrishna there. Well, I can't kill you, sorry. Ahimsa, So she couldn't kill even an insect. She had compassion for all forms of life. And that's a great sensitivity. Another great sensitivity is aradhana, reverence. It is wise to take refuge in God. That one who will pray to God eagerly will see God. So that's this, again, the psychology of the mind. You'll form it into a form that you can see that's not a gross form. You'll be very fortunate if you are there with Sri Ramakrishna or Jesus or Buddha and actually see them in form. But how often does that happen? Every, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years, and then you'll have to wait another 2,000 years to try and see him again. All the time he was telling you, I am within you, I am your own self, try and see me there. Like he told Uddhava around the fireplace. I'm losing this outer form and I'm becoming all of you. That was very beautiful, actually. The 16 direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna were really not looking forward to him passing from that throat cancer. They all were going to be destitute of our master, and then most of them were young boys at that time, teenagers. And so when Sri Ramakrishna finally passed, each and every one of them admitted to the fact that he was more present in them, that they didn't have loss of feeling around him. And they've written testaments about that. So when Sri Ramakrishna passed, we thought we'd be weeping and tearing our hair out and rolling on the grounds, but he came into us and showed himself to us. He was our very consciousness all along. And one of them even said, I realized that his body was actually a block to that bliss. I got attached to his body and loved him through his body, but actually the real bliss was formless. So very beautiful teachings in contemporary times around such things, which really prove the efficacy of Jesus and prove the efficacy of Buddha and Krishna and other more ancient avatars. They're one being. They seem like many, but they're one being. And that's the 4 sensitivities in a nutshell. Let's look at the 4 perfections. There she is with her heart. You see, Shishara Devi sitting in meditation. And the first one would be faith, Shraddha. And her quote there, one must have faith in one's teacher, for therein lies one's chance for liberation. So, or at least for salvation. Like we said yesterday, there's salvation and there's liberation, and the seers of India look at those as 2 different things. One, you get to the Father through the Son. The other, you are the Father. So that's rather the difference. Depends on your own condition of your own mind and how ready you are to be a hailstone that melts in an ocean, or whether you'd rather keep the subtle form in heaven, in a higher heaven than we hear about, and actually see Lord Brahma or see Shri Krishna in form. It'd be like seeing a dream form, very, very high, very beautiful, but almost no vestige of actual shape to it. It'd almost be like we have a feeling in our heart, see? But in that inner realm we have a very, like a fragrance of a thought in our mind. And that realm consists of that. You're also transplanting things from waking and dreaming into it, but there are very, very slender vestiges of that, and transparent almost. So, and of course, it's all done with elation at that level. You don't have pains and sorrows and karmas, and various things aren't weighing on you, so you feel very elevated, very, very transported, lexic like that word, transported. Benevolence is samyatva. Be benevolent to all, do not find fault, remember even a trifle done on your behalf. Another way she put that was people's nature is that they'll forget the 999 good things you did for them and remember the one thing that they didn't like that you did to them. So you're going to have to be very forgiving, and that's also one of the concomitants to these kinds of sensitivities. So remember even a trifle done on your behalf and operate your mind based upon that. Radiance, tejas, is another very beautiful perfection. Some are born with the quality of light. They have wisdom from their very birth. I thought that was enough for her to say about that, because it's a statement, it's one of these loaded statements I like that infers that there's birth, rebirth. It doesn't say it, but it infers it. You would have to have come from another place to have a birth. So it's not like birth is new and there's a fresh baby and it's a clean slate, and probably a mass murderer or a lawyer in there. And probably the second one is worse. So these souls have many conditionings, most souls, but she says some souls are born with a light, like say if Jesus and the major scene was all accurately rendered, then there's great light coming out of that baby. And it's also said about other avatars, the great light that shone off Buddha after he went into nirvana and was silent, couldn't speak. So this is tejas, and it's a fully matured ojas. And ojas is gotten from taking pure food and doing practices like meditation and bringing the energy of food up the spine so that it turns into ojas. It actually turns into mukhya prana, pure energy. And from pure energy, then you get this light. And then if you intensify that light, you can give it to others. So that's like a tier in Kundalini Yoga. Pure food, mantra, spiritual practices, light, and deeper light. 5 things that just happen spontaneously in a person who has ended up with tejas. So, born with the quality of light, and they have wisdom from their very birth, so we cannot blame God for that. I say, oh, you gave him light and you didn't give me light, you see. Or that person has talent, I don't, you see, because that's not the God we're talking about. You're talking about your past lifetime that you earned light. You became a great light, and then you carried it forward in your next lifetime. It's not grace in that sense. Grant grace to yourself and seek that light and become one with it. And of course then love itself, which we talked about here, penultimately. Who calls upon God by his grace gets prema bhakti. This love is to be cherished in utmost privacy. So call upon God in whatever way you see God. Hopefully you see God as your very self. Self grants you that grace, and then love is yours. And may you never lose it again. And shine it on all, as they say, even nowadays. Three sets of 4 here, all in accordance with this sloka 7. Such a one's speech is informed by affection and love. It is lovely and fit, with due regard to time and place. So remember, we're on sloka 7 of the Akshi Upanishad. The 4 attitudes, or beneficial attitudes there, are friendship, mercy, positivity, and indifference. And it's actually a teaching that Krishna has given and Lord Vasishtha has given. Basically, there are these 4 things that you should adopt towards 4 kinds of people. I think it was something like, be friendly to those who are friendly, have compassion for those who suffer, be happy for those who have attained, or reverence for the holy, and be indifferent to the evil. So that's how the teaching's actually given. The way Holy Mother would put it here in terms of maitri, or friendship. Mankind is prone to weakness. One who warns in time is the true friend. So you'll have to go about, and if you see weakness in people or in your children or in others, have to, with sensitivity and with use of these perfections that you've gleaned, you're able to warn in time and turn this person off a wrong track. Also with mercy you should do that, and most people know that Sanskrit term, even here in America, karuna. You hear it so much, it's almost like the word karma. So as far as familiarity goes, so she says, show kindness to all, even to the cow we owe such mercy. Hold the vegetable peelings near her mouth. All of these things are to be done, with your own hand. I do that actually every day. Back in Hawaii at my house, I'll take the compost or peelings out and give them to the cows. Not all of them will come up and take them from my hand. They have to get used to you. Because, but if you don't eat meat, then they'll come. If you eat meat, they'll stay away. Then mudita is a kind of joy or positivity. The purpose of one's life is fulfilled when one is able to bring joy to others. That would be in accordance with our 4 kinds of love here. People who are operating under these kinds of love are able to bring not just happiness that's accompanied with unhappiness, but a kind of joy that's lasting, can bring that into their life. So that whenever you even see such a person, you feel elevated. It just puts, like we saw Lex Hickson, our founder. Oh, you're coming? Great. We see you? Oh, great. Just, of course, when he went away, it was like, the light has gone out of your life kind of thing. So those kinds of people who are born with this tejas and radiate it, they bring it everywhere. And all the Westerners who were fortunate enough to meet Swami Vivekananda when he was here attested to that fact. He was a great light. Finally, we have mudita, indifference, a great teaching. Body changes, Atman remains the same, so please try and practice a little detachment. So she's slowly talking about forgiveness, showing kindness, and then remembering the good things that people do for you. All of this has to do with an attitude, or the 4 attitudes that you must adopt in order to get along with people, even with the so-called evil souls. As they too have Atman in them. It's just buried deeper under mounds of false superimposition. So both these charts really, rather a quick study, the 4 types of love and these 3 sets of 4s. So there's 4 sets of 4s there that we can take to unwrap this sloka 7. And since we do have 15 minutes left, then maybe I can go back and we can look at these doorways to yoga to wrap it up. Because this puts us more on, away from the tantric level of teachings of love and more toward the yoga. This is called limbs of yoga that you are able to follow. And it goes well with Sloka 7 because it starts out saying one's speech should be informed by affection and love. So what's the first thing to do if you want your speech to become that refined? You're going to want to enter into the first doorway of yoga here, which is said, silence. Be quiet and destroy darkness by seeing oneness everywhere. So you could go from here, slokas 2 to sloka 7, and just make that connection. Know that the oneness exists, not see plurality anymore, and then therefore become quiet and contemplate that teaching. And then all of a sudden your speech becomes quiet and indrawn. You might even hear the inner voice, or the voice of more illumined souls. In the waking state, that comes about as certain intuition, but in the dream state, it comes about as an actual vision. So you have to be ready and qualified to hear that. You have an inner eye, but you also have an inner ear. And you can hear Om, for instance, at some points in your life. I heard it in the crib. It's the first memory I had of this lifetime, is hearing the word. Very powerful. And but there are other semblances, you might say, of hearing that sound that come to you, the voice of the ancestors, the voice of the seers and sages, and the voice of celestial beings and so forth. But you'd have to be attuned to that. You have to be consciously listening for it. Meditation is setting yourself up for a conscious hearing of something inside that doesn't come to you through spoken words necessarily. Since words start off as thoughts, then it'll come to you as thoughts. And the thoughts and the words, thought is father to the deed, so it must also be father to the word. So you'll hear your thoughts. You'll have an inner ear that's open to your thoughts and to the thoughts of others. Actually, that Lord Vashishta calls that walking the skies. There's a nice teaching in Yoga Vashishta scripture called the walker of the skies. So you're leaving this sky behind. You're rolling it up like a skin. When will a man hear the truth and see the truth? When he rolls up the sky like a skin, the Upanishad said. So you just roll it up. It's a manifestation of your own thought process. So roll it up. And then you can get inside of this different kind of sky, the sky of awareness, if you want to call it that. And then you'll be hearing some very remarkable things. The Upanishad state, you'll hear the tinkling of a bell, the sound of a kettle drum. You'll see fireflies. There are different things in which you'll experience, and that's at a very beginning stage of breaking through the darkness of non-meditation into meditation. These things are signals both in the realms of sight and sound, that break through these problems, these barriers that have been thickened by society and upbringing and so forth, and are thinned down by teachings. So you hear the word and you meditate on the word, it breaks through these barriers, and pretty soon you have these experiences of walking the skies. The second doorway there, remain alone and practice yoga. Love of lonely company, Sri Krishna says in the Gita, and also distaste for the society of men, he says. Those are two phrases I can remember out of the Gita that fit a seeker of truth. Go out into the forest, be quiet, sit near a stream, pleasant sounds, or no sound in a cave, and be with yourself. Cut time down and practice that kind of meditation, and come out of the forest radiant with tejas, see? And then try and keep a hold of it when you go back to the society of men. You'll probably lose it again, have to go back to the forest a few times. It's called lighting your torch. And when you can keep your torch lit, then you know you're fit for yoga. So he says, give up expectations, desires, and practice non-receiving. So Shankara is getting on the Patanjali boat. See, he knows that by giving up non-receiving and non-giving of gifts, practicing non-giving of gifts, that you'll remember your past lifetimes. Because those things that you're engaged in are about this lifetime alone, and they're taking your mind away from wisdom you had prior. Aparigraha is the real meaning of that yama in yoga, called aparigraha. So Shankara is accenting that. The third doorway then, control the senses and the mind. It's a good teaching, yogic speaking. It's giving you a step-by-step inward process that, if you look at it, you might just to say is kind of akin to dissolving the mind stream, isn't it? You're actually, or Samkhya yoga, moving inside and dissolving the tattvas or purifying the tattvas. It's a kind of a hands-on rendition of it in Advaita by an Advaitist who wants to make it amenable for this age, for people of this age, because he lived in 700 AD, and that's recent for India. So join the word with the mind. So be quiet, destroy darkness by seeing oneness everywhere, give up expectation, desires, practice non-receiving, then join the word with the mind. Now you've actually separated out the word to know what it is, and then you can join it with the mind. Before that, the word was so many things. And a lot of those were lower knowledge. So they were distracting you outwardly, but now you've actually found the origin of the word in the mind, and you can join it with the mind. And that's called origins. Where did the tree come from? From the thought tree in your mind. And so you make those kinds of connections, that everything comes from the mind. And the thoughts are seeds to this, and this is the fruition of the seeds out here. Waking, dreaming, inner life, outer life. Follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Before that he said, you're going to have a spiritual life. You don't have one yet. There's no inner life in you. You have fish, you have nets, you have huts, you have wives. You have your job as a tax collector or whatever. But you don't have an inner life yet. That's how he founded people, Judea. So inward we go. He starts taking them inward. And then that will cause a bunch of other people to follow, fishers of men. And it's, that was 700 years before Shankara is saying this. After you join the word to the mind, join the mind with the intellect. Here's where we're getting that inward tattva kind of teaching again. By controlling your thought. So if the word has come from a thought and you've actually singled out the word so that it's back to its origin in the mind, then the mind has to know where the origin of mind and thought are, and that would be mind and word, and that would be in the thought itself, chitta. Yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. Yoga, union with God, depends upon you cutting out the vibrations of your mind. and sitting for a long time with a mind that's not vibrating, like 12 days and 12 nights, or 49 days under the bo tree. This was all an attempt to stop the mind thinking for a long, long period of time, so that it could get to the origin of thought. So if you pass through this fourth doorway, things are getting very deep, very profound, very engaging, and probably leaning towards formlessness. So that after you had the experience of formless, you could come out of the forest and say, I am the light of the worlds. It traced it all back to the light of the Father. Then join the intellect with the ego. So under the tree for 49 days, the worst part of that for Lord Buddha was meeting Mara. Mara is the ego, or what we would call the devil. Really what we're calling a devil is our own ego. That's devilish. It's at the root of all things selfish, harmful. There's no incarnate devil out there with a pitchfork and a horn. That's a metaphor. And a superstition at worst. But what it is the devil in you. And that's this separate eye maker, Vishta calls it. Your ego got on a throne and dethroned the true I and put itself there. And then all worship and deference was paid to that for so long. Now you're going to have to eject that ego off the throne. Dethrone. And it's a battle, like that. So that's a hard juncture, joining the ego to the intellect, because the intellect knows in a deeper level. We said that earlier in the Upanishad, that when the intellect is refined, then it can see. It's like the opening of the third eye. It's got its own wisdom, and the ego has been using that in adverse ways. When you find the ego, by that time it's ripe, like he used to give that teaching. Like, what about my ego? Apakvahamkara, he would say. Right now, or before Pakvahamkara, your ego was unripe. But then it turns ripe, and Pakvahamkara, and then all of a sudden it doesn't add, it's not in the way anymore. It's like the ego of a child. It's just like gone with the wind. It's there one moment, gone with the wind. So otherwise it's there all the time and causing problems. So in that way, the intellect is going to be your greatest friend when it and lead you to the witness. The single eye was detached witness of all things. They call that Sakshi Bhutam, because Bhuta is everything in the world and all the phenomena that happens. So you want to detach yourself from phenomena, because that's all change. There's the world, there's phenomena, here's Brahman, non-phenomenon, the noumenon and the phenomenon, they say in Vedanta. So you want to go towards the unchanging, that isn't the big show going on in front of your five senses and causing you to believe in transformation and believe in birth and death and believe in disease and sorrow. When your true nature is ever blissful and ever free and never bound. So the witness is a very high place in yoga and in Vedanta. Detached witness consciousness, they call it. And then the ego vanishes, which is that, sixth doorway. The ego vanishes, and the witness alone remains, and you join that with Brahman. And that's the bliss of Brahman you're talking about. At that point, they say the free soul can attach and detach at will, which was a teaching my teacher gave me. Swami Sheshanand used to say, you come here and you're attached, so I teach you the art of detachment, and that's good. But what you really want is the ability to attach and detach at will. So you should be able to associate with things, not identify with them, is kind of what's being said. If you identify with them and can't leave off of them, it's a problem. A real problem when it becomes addiction. a little less of a problem when it becomes habit. But you can break that habit, and then it becomes freeing. You feel like you're being freed, set free from limitations, and you're experiencing some of these beautiful teachings that we just looked at, of this different sensitivities and perfections and beneficial attitudes. Those are almost commonplace to you now. You've replaced the old mind with the new mind, and it's got all these positive qualities to it. So she says here, or Shankara says here at the end, only that meditation that is free of all doubts, only by that meditation that is free of all doubts, does one realize the self in nirvikalpa. Otherwise, other thoughts will enter into the unstable mind, which will then get mixed up with them. So you're mixing up all the tattvas with your consciousness, and that's usually what worldly people are doing, and even seekers after truth are also mixing it up. There's an admixture still in them, but when they begin to purify through sadhana and spiritual practice, things turn from ashuddha, impure, to shuddha, mixed, to shuddha, pure. And at that point then, you get this vision of the self in nirvikalpa. Interesting word. Kalpa means really phases of time, and nirvi means extinct. So you've rendered time extinct. And like I said about the word, that Sri Ramakrishna saw all worlds coming out of it and going back into it, when he saw it deep inside of himself, probably at the center. And then he saw that no time was passing, so he had actually gone beyond the realms of time and space, and he was seeing spontaneous manifestation and spontaneous dissolution. And time wasn't there. It's sort of like maybe a dream or deep sleep when everything disappears, but only the witness remains. The one remains the same, the many change in paths. Life is a many-colored dome which stains the pure white light of reality. Your own poet Shelley said that. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamaya Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya Abira Bira Maedi Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light, and lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.